long as America stands for justice, then peace and harmony will, in the end, prevail.
That's President Trump talking about what's going on in Syria. We know that there were some Tomahawk cruise missiles launched last night. Karen Travers with ABC News is traveling with the president in Florida. Good morning, Karen Travers.
Good morning.
So what's the latest?
So the Pentagon is pushing back on the statements from the Russians about the effectiveness of the military strike. The Pentagon says that, a U.S. official, I should say, says that about 20 aircraft were hit in these airstrikes, but none of those were Russian aircrafts. But the Russian Defense Ministry is very aggressively pushing back on this. The Russians are calling this a clear act of aggression. They condemned this military action, and they've suspended military communications between the U.S. and Russia that have been taking place in Syria. They've called for an emergency UN Security Council meeting, and also saying that far less rockets hit the base than what the U.S. is claiming. And they're also saying that the runways were not damaged and no aircraft was damaged. So I think you're starting to see some spin, certainly, on this airstrike. One thing to note is that next week, Secretary of State Rex Tillerson is scheduled to go to Moscow for what was already going to be a very critical high-stakes meeting. As of now, that has not been canceled.
Has President Trump or anybody from the U.S. Signaled that more strikes are in the future towards Syria?
A U.S. official told us last night that right now this was a one-off strike, that there is nothing being considered at the moment, but that there was always the option until another decision is made. So leaving some wiggle room that if the situation were to change or there was a further action by Bashar al-Assad, the president could take action. But in terms of the preparedness and the planning that went into this, it was a one-strike decision.
And the U.S. is claiming that they destroyed these planes and these runways.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and then the pushback from the Russians just
right.
a few moments ago is that the runways were undamaged.
This is all during this Chinese summit down there in Florida, so mm-hmm. I can only imagine what the feeling is like down there.
It was a very hectic night. I mean, you certainly had a sense from President Trump over the 24 hours preceding these airstrikes that his calculation had changed, and he was talking very tough about what he saw, how it impacted him, and that he was considering a military option. It wasn't sure how imminent that, of course, was going to be, but now we know that on Wednesday night he was briefed by his National Security Council back in Washington, was given options for military action, 3 different options. He asked for information on 2 of them. The National Security Council officials went back, got his answers, and presented them to him on Thursday. The president then authorized this strike. I should note that he was having dinner with the Chinese president last night. That wrapped up just after 8:30. We know that the Chinese motorcade left around 8:40 p.m. Eastern time, and we're told that the airstrike took place at 8:45.
Karen, it's been a week, as you mentioned, starting off with both Nikki Haley and Rex Tillerson basically saying that Assad and the people have to handle this whole problem, sort of singling that we were going to stay out of Syria, and it ends, the week ends with Tomahawk cruise missiles being lobbed in from the Mediterranean. Now we have this change in, I guess, this hardening of the U.S.-Russian feelings and/or conversations. I mean, this is turned on a dime. Has the administration talked about that at all?
It really has. I mean, it's incredible, the changes. And then there was a statement last night from the Secretary of State that it hasn't really changed the posture towards Syria. And that's just kind of hard to fathom given what took place last night. I think the thing to look for now as Russia weighs in, as the damage assessments come in, and that's debated today. I think the next big thing is, like, what is the diplomatic plan? The administration approves this last night, goes ahead and does it, but now the fallout has to be handled from a diplomatic perspective, and there's no indication that there is a plan of how the U.S. will coordinate with allies and what the way forward will be, and certainly leaving open the option of another potential airstrike. But what happens with Bashar al-Assad? Last week, it wasn't a priority for the administration, according to Nikki Haley. Rex Tillerson said the Syrian people should decide his future, and now this is what's taking place. So that is the big question for the administration, is what exactly happens to him.
Yeah, the French, England, Germany, any of the allies check in over the last 24 hours?
The administration was saying that there is support for this from European allies. The Middle East allies, of course, are approving this and weighing in with support for the U.S. But I think it then depends on what happens next. And you have to, is there going to be diplomatic sessions and getting European countries on board with some game plan? I mean, yesterday they decided to do this. They're saying it was effective. But now what? Karen Travers traveling with the president in Florida, ABC News correspondent. Karen, thanks.
Thank you.
626, Big 550, KTRS. Appliance Discounters just opened up their newest